"You are too local for the life I'm entering now." Those were the exact words Samuel said as he signed the divorce papers and slid them across the table to Salome, convinced that money had finally placed him above consequences. What he didn't realize was that this wasn't the end of her story. It was the moment everything began to turn. By the time the court doors closed, Samuel would learn a lesson no amount of money could erase. Before we proceed, kindly subscribe to this channel where wisdom lives, because the story shared here might change the way you see life forever. 4 years earlier, Samuel Adebayo was just another ambitious man chasing relevance in a city that rewards noise more than character. He wore second-hand suits to interviews, memorized motivational quotes, and practiced confidence in the mirror like it was a skill you could borrow. Lagos did not care. Doors stayed shut. But Salome stayed. She was there when power went out and candles became dinner guests. She was there when rejection emails came in at midnight and Samuel pretended not to read them. She ironed his shirts, edited his proposals, prayed prayers he was too tired to finish. When people mocked his dreams, she defended them like they were her own. They married quietly, no viral videos, no celebrity pastor, just two people, hopeful and determined, standing before witnesses who believed love could survive scarcity. Then Lagos changed Samuel. Or maybe it only revealed him. The call came on a Tuesday morning, a strange number, a brief conversation, a long silence. Then Samuel screamed so loudly that neighbors thought something terrible had happened. A $50 million contract approved, global partners, immediate visibility, boardroom respect. Success had finally answered his calls. Within weeks, his name appeared in business blogs and glossy magazines. He started attending invite-only events where people smiled too much and listened too little. Compliments became currency. Ego grew faster than gratitude. Salome watched the transformation quietly. She noticed the way he corrected her English in public, the way he winced when she greeted his colleagues warmly, the way he suddenly preferred eating out, not because he was busy, but because home food didn't fit the lifestyle anymore. Still, she prepared their 4th wedding anniversary with care. No audience, no cameras, just food, soft music, and memories. She wore a simple dress, the one Samuel once said made her look peaceful. Samuel arrived late. He barely noticed the candles. He barely noticed her. 2 days later, on a Thursday evening that carried no warning, Samuel stood in their living room, arms crossed, voice steady, eyes cold. "Salome, we need to talk." Those words rarely mean what they pretend to mean. "I've been thinking," he continued, pacing slowly, like a man rehearsing bad news. "My life is changing. My circle is changing. Everything is bigger now." Salome smiled nervously. "That's good, Sam. We prayed for this." He stopped pacing. "That's the problem. You still think small." She laughed, unsure. "What do you mean?" Then came the sentence that would follow her into courtrooms and nightmares. "You are too local for me now." The air shifted. He explained it like a presentation, calm, strategic, cruel. "You don't fit the image anymore. My status requires a woman who understands high society, someone polished, someone who can represent me." Represent, like a brand, not a wife. Salome felt her chest tighten. So, 4 years means nothing? It meant something then. This is now. By morning, she was gone, thrown out of the house she helped build, left with a suitcase and a heart she could barely carry. She moved in with a friend, her dignity bruised but intact. 2 days later, divorce papers arrived. Samuel didn't just want freedom, he wanted dominance. He planned to use the prenuptial agreement he once insisted on for protection. He wanted to leave her with nothing, no property, no compensation, no voice. Salome did not protest online. She did not beg. She did not grant interviews or drag his name through blogs. She cried in private. What Samuel did not understand was this: silence is not weakness. Sometimes it is preparation. Somewhere across the city, a newspaper headline landed on a polished desk. A man read the words slowly. His hands trembled. His breath stalled. The name he had avoided for years stared back at him. Salome. And the story of a man who said she was too local had just awakened something that had been sleeping for decades.
Salome disappeared from Samuel's life the way people assume broken women always do, quietly, without resistance, without noise. And Samuel liked it that way. Silence made guilt easier to live with. Silence made victory feel closer. She moved into Kimmy's apartment in Yaba with just one suitcase and a heart that felt heavier than everything she owned. The apartment was small, always humming with generator noise and late-night traffic, but it offered something her marriage no longer did: safety. Here, no one corrected her accent. No one measured her worth by how she looked beside them. At night, when Kimmy slept, Salome sat on the edge of the bed and let the memories come in waves. Not the shouting kind, the quiet ones, the ones that ask questions without answers. How did love become embarrassment? When did sacrifice turn into shame? Meanwhile, Samuel was moving fast. In his mind, speed meant control. He told himself that if everything happened quickly, new woman, new papers, new life, he wouldn't have to sit with what he had done. Lagos rewarded men who didn't look back. He called Femi Ogunle the same week Salome left. Femi was the kind of lawyer people recommended in whispers: sharp suits, sharper tongue, a man who treated courtrooms like chessboards and people like pieces. They met in Femi's office in Ikoyi, a space designed to intimidate: glass walls, leather chairs, certificates arranged like trophies. "She won't be a problem," Samuel said confidently, leaning back. "She doesn't even know where to start." Femi scanned the prenuptial agreement slowly, nodding. "You did well signing this early. Courts respect preparation." "I don't want her thinking she's entitled to anything," Samuel added. "She was just there. Just there." Femi closed the file. "Then we'll make sure she leaves with memories and nothing else." Divorce papers were filed the next day. They were delivered without ceremony. No call, no warning, just a thick envelope full of legal language that reduced 4 years of marriage to paragraphs and clauses. Salome read every line carefully, her fingers steady despite the storm inside her chest. The document was clear: no shared assets, no compensation, no claim. She folded the papers and placed them neatly on the table. Kenny watched her closely. "You're not saying anything." Salome exhaled. "Because shouting won't change what's written there." "Then what will?" "Truth," she replied, "and time." She didn't hire a flashy lawyer. She didn't rush to social media. She returned quietly to work, took extra shifts, saved every dime she could. She began writing things down: dates, conversations, witnesses. Not because she fully understood the law, but because something deep inside her refused to accept that love could be erased so easily. Samuel, on the other hand, was enjoying applause. His new relationship with Ivy, his secretary, became public almost immediately. She fit the picture he wanted: articulate, stylish, comfortable in elite spaces. They attended events together, posed for photos, laughed loudly. People congratulated him for upgrading. Ivy enjoyed the attention, but she also noticed things she didn't say out loud. Samuel's irritation when questioned, his obsession with how he was perceived, his refusal to ever admit fault. Still, money softened discomfort. Until it didn't. The court date was set. Samuel felt confident. He had the law, he had the agreement, he had the narrative. Salome had none of that. At least that's what he believed. The night before the hearing, Salome couldn't sleep, not because she feared losing, but because she feared being erased. She stood by the window, watching Lagos breathe below her, cars moving, lights blinking, lives continuing. She whispered to herself, "I know who I am." That was enough for now.
The courtroom was already full. Divorce cases rarely drew a crowd, but this one carried money, reputation, and quiet cruelty. People came not because they cared about love, but because Lagos always wanted to see who would leave standing. Samuel arrived early, dressed with intention. His posture said victory. His lawyer, Femi, arranged documents with the confidence of a man who expected no surprises. Samuel glanced around the room once, spotted Salome sitting alone, and allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. She looked ordinary, exactly how he remembered her. Then the doors at the back of the courtroom opened, not loudly, not suddenly, deliberately. A tall man walked in, unhurried, dressed in a dark suit that did not beg for attention. His presence did something strange to the room. Conversation thinned, movement slowed, respect settled before anyone consciously decided to give it. Lawyers recognized him immediately. Joe Abini, senior advocate of the country. The judge paused before sitting. Feme's hand froze mid-page. Samuel frowned. He leaned closer to Feme. "Who's that?" Feme didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened. When the clerk called the case and requested legal appearances, the man rose. "My lord," he said evenly, "I represent the respondent." The judge looked up. "Your name, counsel?" "Joe Abini." The effect was immediate. The courtroom shifted. Then Joe added, calmly, as though stating a simple fact, "For full disclosure, my lord, the respondent is also my daughter." This time, the silence was not controlled. Heads turned sharply toward Salome. Whispers moved like electricity across the benches. Samuel's chest tightened. He stared at Salome, disbelief hardening into panic. "You told me your father was dead," he whispered. Salome turned to him slowly. "I didn't say he died. I only said he was dead to me, but we have reconciled." The judge called for order. Joe took his seat beside Salome, placing his files carefully on the desk. He did not touch her. He did not speak to her. The space between them held years of absence, resentment, and things neither of them pretended had disappeared. As Feme stood to begin, Salome's mind drifted, not away from the courtroom, but into the memory that had brought Joe Abini back into her life. Joe Abini had read the article of Samuel's marital issues with Salome alone in his study. It was a quiet Sunday morning. The house was silent, the kind of silence only wealth and loneliness could afford. The newspaper lay open on his desk, folded carelessly, until one paragraph pulled his attention and refused to let go. A prominent Lagos businessman has filed for divorce from his wife, citing incompatibility after securing a major international contract. He almost skipped it. Then he saw the name, Salome Adebayo. Joe reread the line slowly, then again. His hand trembled slightly as he turned a page, searching for more. The story was brief, cold, efficient, a woman discarded after 4 years, described as not fitting the lifestyle anymore. Joe leaned back in his chair. Memories returned uninvited. Salome at 6 years old, sitting on the edge of the bed, asking her mother when Daddy would come home. Salome at 10, learning not to ask anymore. Joe had left because of irreconcilable differences with Salome's mother. He told himself he would return for her someday. By the time he did, Salome had closed the door. Now, years later, another man had looked at his daughter and decided she was disposable. He wasn't going to let that happen. Joe closed the paper and stood up. Regret does not shout. It settles. He asked his assistant to look for Salome's number for him. It took a day. When he finally called, his voice was steady, but his chest burned. "Salome," he said, "it's your father." There was a pause long enough to hurt. "I read about what happened," he continued. "I know I have no right to speak into your life, but I also know what it feels like to abandon someone who believed in you." She did not respond immediately. "I don't need a father right now," Salome said eventually. "I need someone who won't let me be erased." Joe swallowed. "Then let me stand where I failed to stand before." They met the next morning. He apologized without excuses. She listened without softening. He told her he had left because success blinded him. She told him what it cost her mother. They did not reconcile the past. They aligned for the present. "I will represent you," Joe said, "not to fix what I broke years ago, but to make sure no one breaks you again." She agreed, not because he was her father, because he was right. Now in the courtroom, Joe stood.
"My lord," he said, "this case is not about incompatibility. It is about convenience replacing loyalty." Samuel shifted in his seat. Joe continued, presenting documents, emails, proposals, drafts Salome had helped refine, proof of her contribution when Samuel had nothing but ambition. "We will challenge the prenuptial agreement," Joe said calmly, "on grounds of incomplete disclosure and imbalance of power." Femi objected. The judge overruled. As the hearing progressed, Samuel felt something unfamiliar rising in his chest. Doubt. For the first time, he realized the woman he dismissed as too local had not been as small as he believed, and the man he never bothered to ask about was now standing between him and everything he thought he owned.
The courtroom no longer felt neutral. It became a battleground, quiet, controlled, but brutal in its precision. Every word mattered, every pause carried weight. The spectators returned, larger in number now. Word had spread that this was no longer a routine divorce. Something big was unfolding. Samuel arrived later than usual. For the first time since this began, his confidence looked rehearsed. The sharp suit remained, but the ease was gone. He barely acknowledged Ivy's text messages. His focus stayed on the table, on the files, on the man seated across from him, Joe Abeni. The judge took his seat. Proceedings resumed. Femi stood quickly, eager to regain control. "My lord, the petitioner maintains that the prenuptial agreement remains valid and enforceable. The respondent willingly signed." Joe rose before he could finish. "My lord," Joe said calmly, "with respect, willingness is not the same as informed consent." The judge nodded. "Proceed, Mr. Abeni." Joe walked slowly toward the center, file in hand. He did not pace, he did not raise his voice. He spoke like a man teaching a lesson he knew too well. "This prenuptial agreement was signed when the petitioner had limited disclosed assets," Joe began. "However, evidence before this court will show that at the time of signing, negotiations for high-value business interests were already underway." Femi objected. "Speculation." Joe did not even look at him. "Documented." He handed copies forward. Emails, meeting invites, proposal drafts dated months before the agreement was signed. Salome recognized some of them, documents she had once helped Samuel edit late at night while he told her they were just ideas. Joe continued, "My client was never informed of these pending interests. That omission alone renders this agreement legally vulnerable." The judge leaned forward. Joe pressed on. "Furthermore, the agreement contains clauses that disproportionately favor the petitioner without provision for non-financial contribution. This court has long held that marriage is not a commercial transaction." Samuel's fingers curled into his palm. Joe turned slightly, his eyes briefly meeting Samuel's. "You cannot build success on someone's sacrifice and then pretend that sacrifice never happened." Femi rose again, irritation seeping into his voice. "My lord, are we now punishing success?" Joe answered before the judge could. "No, we are questioning integrity." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Then Joe did something no one expected. "My lord," he said, "with your permission, I would like to address the petitioner's most prized asset." Samuel stiffened. Joe continued, unhurried. "The $150 million contract repeatedly referenced as the foundation of the petitioner's new status." The judge nodded. "Go on." Joe opened a new file. "That contract was awarded by a foreign company operating through a local partner," Joe said. "A partner company that happens to have long-standing business ties with my firm." The room went still. Samuel's heart began to race. Joe looked directly at the judge. "Upon reviewing how this contract was secured, my firm identified misrepresentations made by the petitioner regarding his capacity, experience, and internal approvals." Femi shot to his feet. "This is outrageous." Joe raised a hand gently. "Facts are never outrageous, counsel." He turned back to the bench. "I have formally written to the partner company, detailing these discrepancies and requesting an immediate withdrawal pending investigation." The words landed like a hammer. Samuel surged to his feet. "You can't do that!" The judge banged the gavel. "Order!" Joe remained calm.
I can, and I have." Samuel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Joe added quietly, "Success obtained through deception is temporary. The law has a long memory."
The judge called for submissions on asset division. Joe was relentless. He argued contribution, he argued reliance, he argued unjust enrichment. He cited precedents, cases that redefined marriage as partnership, not performance. He dismantled the prenuptial agreement, clause by clause, exposing vague language, missing disclosures, and ethical lapses. Salome watched in silence, not with satisfaction, with clarity. By afternoon, Samuel's posture had collapsed inward. Femi whispered urgently, but the options were gone. Every defense had been anticipated, every shortcut exposed. The judge adjourned briefly. When he returned, his ruling was firm. "The prenuptial agreement is hereby set aside," he said. "The court recognizes the respondent's contribution to the marriage and the petitioner's failure to disclose material information." Samuel's breath hitched. "The assets acquired during the marriage shall be equitably divided," the judge continued. "This includes properties, accounts, and business interests." Salome felt the weight of the moment settle. The judge concluded, "This court will not endorse a version of marriage where loyalty is punished and ambition excuses betrayal." It was over. Samuel slumped into his chair. The contract that made him arrogant was under review. His assets were no longer his alone. His reputation, once glossy, now carried a stain that money couldn't erase. Salome stood quietly as people whispered again. This time, the whispers sounded different. Joe gathered his files. He turned to Salome and said softly, "The law did its part." She nodded. So did the truth. Samuel watched them walk away. For the first time, he understood something too late. Pride does not protect you in court. Character does. The judgment did not end Samuel's fall. It started it. Outside the courtroom, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions Samuel could no longer answer with confidence. His name, once spoken with admiration, now carried a sharp edge. People did not ask how he felt, they asked how much he had lost. And he had lost plenty. But Salome was not done. Revenge, when rushed, looks like anger. Revenge, when patient, looks like silence. The enforcement phase began quietly. Joe Abeni moved with precision. Court orders were served, accounts were frozen, property valuations were conducted. Shares Samuel once bragged about were traced, audited, and divided. Not because Salome wanted to punish him emotionally, but because the law finally saw what Samuel had tried to hide. The Lekki duplex he once threw her out of? Half hers. The investment accounts he opened during the marriage, subject to division. The luxury SUV he bought weeks after insulting her, listed among marital assets. Samuel watched his world shrink in real time. The real blow came 3 weeks later. The foreign partner company released a statement. An investigation had confirmed material misrepresentation in Samuel's application for the $50 million contract. The deal was officially terminated. Not suspended, terminated. Within hours, local partners distanced themselves. Board invitations stopped. Phone calls went unanswered. The industry that once welcomed him now treated him like a liability. Ivy left quietly. No drama, no explanation. She blocked his number after retrieving her belongings. Status was attractive. Failure was not. Samuel moved out of the duplex and into a service department that felt like a hotel with no checkout date. Nights became long. Silence returned, this time without comfort. Meanwhile, Salome did something unexpected. She did not celebrate publicly. She did not grant interviews. She rebuilt. With her settlement, she started a consulting firm, small, focused, efficient. She hired young women who reminded her of herself when she believed loyalty would always be rewarded. She paid them well. She trained them better. When asked about her ex-husband in a rare interview, she said only one sentence,
I didn't take revenge. I took back what was erased. Samuel had mistaken humility for weakness, silence for emptiness, loyalty for smallness. Samuel learned a truth too late for redemption. You can rise on pride, but you will fall on it harder. Salome did not return to him. She did not forgive him. She did not need to. She returned to herself. Do you think Samuel deserved what Salome and her father did to him? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to share the video so that others can learn from this too.